Ethan Vale was 29, a quiet software engineer who loved old houses and forgotten histories. Lena Moore was 27, a warm-hearted elementary school teacher who felt everything deeply. They had just begun their long-delayed honeymoon in a remote forest town known for its misty mornings. Ethan's late aunt had left behind a century-old house that seemed perfect for a peaceful escape. The air during their arrival felt soft and hopeful, wrapping around them like a gentle welcome. They were excited to slow down, breathe, and enjoy a few days far from their crowded routines. The old house looked mysterious at first glance, its wooden frame whispering secrets from decades ago. Yet something about its nostalgic charm made the couple believe they were stepping into a quiet romantic chapter. Ethan and Lena eased into their first quiet days in the old house, spending mornings sipping tea by the wide window. Every afternoon they wandered through the forest behind the property, enjoying the hush of wind threading through tall pines. Lena felt warmed by Ethan's gentle presence, especially when he spoke about forgotten histories with that spark in his eyes. He had a way of turning dusty facts into living stories, and she loved watching him come alive in places like this. The house itself felt like a character, with its scent of aged wood and the soft light drifting through antique curtains. Everything inside seemed to hum with nostalgia, creating a peaceful bubble that separated them from the rest of the world. At night, they curled up by the fireplace to read, teasing each other about the house's old secrets. Sometimes Ethan would pause mid-sentence like he was listening for something, then laugh it off. A friendly old neighbor mentioned that the house has a soul of its own, speaking in a tone both playful and strangely sincere. Lena brushed it aside, but she noticed Ethan glance at the attic stairs afterward. To anyone watching, this looked like a perfect honeymoon wrapped in warmth and simplicity. It felt like a small, lovely world built just for them. But peace can be deceitful, and this gentle calm was only the curtain before a truth waiting in the shadows. Lena woke violently from her sleep on that first night, her breath trembling as a soft whisper brushed her ear saying her name. Ethan slept deeply beside her, and she told herself it was only exhaustion playing tricks on her mind. The next morning, while clearing dust from the living room shelves, Ethan found a cracked wooden box with a broken lock lying behind an old cabinet. Inside was a faded photograph of a young woman in a white dress, beautiful yet carrying a sorrow that felt almost alive. Lena held the picture carefully, feeling a strange chill travel down her spine as she studied the woman's eyes. Ethan tried to laugh it off, but his voice betrayed a faint unease. On the second night, the whisper returned, but this time it wasn't soft or distant. It was clearer, colder, and it spoke both their names in a tone that froze Lena in place. Ethan sat upright, wide awake, because he had heard it too. The sound seemed to drift from the hallway, like someone pacing slowly just outside their bedroom door. They stepped out with a lantern, following the echo that grew sharper with each step. The house felt unnaturally still, as though it were holding its breath. When they reached the staircase, the whisper shifted above them, pulling their attention toward the attic. Lena grabbed Ethan's hand tightly, but curiosity pushed them forward. They climbed the creaking steps, every footstep sounding too loud for the silence around them. The attic door was slightly open, as if someone had been there moments before. Ethan pushed it gently, and the door groaned as a draft of cold air swept past them. Dust filled the room like a veil, settling over old trunks and forgotten furniture. Then Lena saw her. A faint silhouette of a woman stood at the far end, her back turned, long dark hair cascading over a white dress that fluttered without any wind. The figure didn't move, yet the room seemed to pulse with her presence. Lena's heart hammered as she whispered Ethan's name, but she couldn't look away. Slowly, the woman's head tilted, as if listening for something, before she turned around. Her face was nothing but a smooth, pale emptiness. Lena gasped and stumbled backward, her body locking between terror and disbelief. Ethan grabbed her arm, dragging her toward the stairs as the lantern flickered violently. They bolted down from the attic, their footsteps pounding through the darkness while the whisper swelled behind them like a distant cry. The entire house felt different now, heavier, as though awakened. This was the first true fracture in their calm honeymoon, a moment when the story shed its gentle skin and revealed something chilling beneath. It was the point where innocence ended and dread quietly took its place. The next morning, Ethan woke with a sense of purpose, determined to uncover the identity of the woman in the photograph. He headed to the small town library, a quiet place that smelled of old paper and rain-soaked wood. The elderly librarian recognized the house immediately when Ethan described it. She told him about Eleanor Whitford, a gentle young woman who had lived there more than 70 years ago. Eleanor had fallen deeply in love with a man named Rowan, a carpenter who dreamed of traveling abroad to earn enough for their future. Before he left, he promised he would return to marry her and build the life they imagined together. But Rowan never came back, and the years passed in painful silence. Eleanor spent the rest of her life waiting by the upstairs window, watching every road and listening for footsteps that never arrived. When Ethan returned home, Lena listened quietly as he relayed everything he had learned. The sorrow in the story pressed against her chest, as if Eleanor's longing had seeped into the walls around them. By nightfall, the atmosphere in the house felt different, heavier, as though someone unseen had grown desperate. Lena stepped into the bedroom and froze, because the ghost no longer hid in shadows. Eleanor stood there with unsettling clarity, her white dress still drifting without wind and her head slightly bowed. Slowly, she lifted her gaze and looked directly at Lena, as if pleading for understanding. Lena whispered Ethan's name, and he rushed into the room, stopping abruptly when he saw the apparition. Fear flashed across his face, but beneath it was a newfound resolve. He stepped forward cautiously, speaking to the spirit with a trembling but steady voice. Ethan asked Eleanor what she needed, what she wanted, and why she kept calling them into her story. The room responded before she did. A sudden gust of icy wind spiraled around them, rattling the window frames and shaking the lamp on the bedside table. The temperature dropped sharply, turning their breaths into pale fog that swirled in the dark. Then a loud thud echoed through the house as something fell from the hallway shelf. It was a thin, dust-covered journal with a cracked leather spine, lying open on the floor as though pushed by invisible hands. Ethan picked it up, and Lena felt her pulse spike when she recognized a name written inside the first page. It was Eleanor's diary, untouched for decades but suddenly offered to them by the restless spirit herself. The air around them hummed with tension, heavy with the weight of a truth begging to be revealed. This was the moment when their fear shifted into something sharper, something that foreshadowed a painful unraveling. And they both understood that whatever came next would change everything. Lena sat beside the flickering lamp, turning each fragile page with trembling fingers. She read how Eleanor spent years waiting by the attic window, counting seasons like beads on a rosary as hope slowly thinned. The diary was filled with quiet grief, describing nights when Eleanor cried beside a candle because she no longer knew whether Rowan was alive or just a memory fading in the dark. Lena felt every word sink into her heart like cold rain, pulling her into the loneliness of a woman trapped in endless waiting. She paused more than once, sensing an echo of Eleanor's longing inside herself, as if the spirit's emotions were bleeding through time. Ethan watched her silently and understood that the ghost they feared was not vengeful but heartbreakingly lost. He realized Eleanor had never intended to harm them, only to reach out in her plea for closure after decades of unanswered questions. Lena closed the diary and pressed it gently against her chest, overwhelmed by the weight of another woman's sorrow. The room around them grew unusually still, as if even the air waited for their next decision. They exchanged a look that needed no words, a shared understanding that the haunting was not a curse but a cry for help. Ethan took Lena's hand and admitted softly that Eleanor's story made him rethink the meaning of devotion and the burdens of promises left unfinished. Lena nodded, her eyes warm with empathy rather than fear, and she whispered that no soul should be left wandering between hope and despair. In that quiet moment, under the glow of the dim lamp and the scent of old paper, a subtle shift happened. The tension that had gripped the house loosened slightly, like something unseen was listening and waiting. For the first time since the haunting began, they felt a faint spark of purpose instead of dread, a belief that they could offer Eleanor the release she had been denied for so long. And with that realization came a gentle but undeniable hope. Ethan and Lena returned to the attic that night, carrying the worn diary and a single golden candle glowing softly in the dark. They felt the wooden stairs creak under their feet as if the house itself was watching their every move. When they stepped inside, the cold air wrapped around them, yet it no longer felt hostile but expectant. Lena placed the candle on an old trunk, letting its warm light spill across the dusty floorboards. They opened the diary to the final entries where Eleanor wrote of her longing to see Rowan one last time, even if only to know he was safe somewhere far away. Ethan's voice trembled slightly as he read her words aloud, allowing them to float into the shadows of the attic. Earlier that day, he had searched through the town's archives and discovered a faded newspaper article tucked between two brittle folders. The article revealed that Rowan did return to the village, thin and ill, but still carrying the same devotion he had left with years before. He had arrived too late, finding only Eleanor's grave instead of the woman he had crossed oceans to come home to. Heartbroken, he visited her resting place every day until his own passing a few months later. Now, standing in the attic, Lena repeated the truth softly, telling Eleanor that Rowan never forgot her and never stopped loving her even across continents and years. She whispered that their story had not been abandoned, only interrupted by fate's cruel timing. The temperature in the room shifted gently as a pale white figure appeared near the window where Eleanor had once waited for Rowan. Her presence was no longer hollow but filled with tender sorrow, as though she finally understood what had really happened. Slowly, she lifted her gaze to Lena and Ethan, her expression softening with a gratitude that words could never express. She reached out toward the diary, her translucent fingers brushing its cover like she was touching a piece of her past for the last time. The candle flame flickered, and Eleanor's form began to dissolve into a warm, fading glow that shimmered like morning light breaking through fog. Within seconds, the attic brightened subtly as if years of sadness were lifting from the walls. The heaviness that had clung to the house melted away, leaving behind only silence and the faint scent of old paper. Ethan exhaled, realizing he had been holding his breath the entire time. Lena leaned into him as they stood in the quiet transformation of the attic, both moved by the strange beauty of what they had just witnessed. They knew Eleanor's spirit was finally free, her long wait brought to a gentle end. As they walked back downstairs, the house felt lighter, almost alive again, like it was relieved after carrying a sorrow it never asked to hold. Ethan wrapped his arm around Lena, and she closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the peace surrounding them. Leaving the quiet little town behind, Ethan and Lena stopped at a small cafe that overlooked a narrow stone bridge. The air smelled of roasted beans and rain, and for the first time in days, everything felt gently normal again. The old man behind the counter greeted them with a warm nod, but his eyes lingered on Ethan as though he recognized something unspoken. When they mentioned Eleanor Whitford's house, the man's expression shifted into a mix of nostalgia and sorrow. He told them he used to see Rowan every afternoon, sitting silently beside Eleanor's grave with a bouquet of wildflowers in his trembling hands. Rowan never spoke to anyone, but the grief in his posture said everything about the love he carried until his final breath. Ethan and Lena exchanged a look, realizing Eleanor had never known the full truth of Rowan's return or the devotion he held onto for the rest of his life. Her spirit had wandered the attic searching for an answer she never received in time. Now, thanks to them uncovering Rowan's story, her final question had finally been given voice and closure. The burden that lingered in the old house was gone, replaced by a peace that traveled with them even as they left the forest road behind. As they continued their late honeymoon, the world felt a little softer, as if love itself had stretched across decades just to show them its quiet strength. They held hands in the car, neither speaking, both thinking of Eleanor and Rowan's unfinished story that had finally found its ending. The message was clear: say the words that matter while you still have the chance. Love deserves honesty, presence, and the courage to face whatever truth it holds. Before the road curved into the mountains, Ethan looked at Lena and whispered that he was grateful for every moment they still had ahead. She smiled, knowing that the story they had witnessed was now a part of them forever. Do you believe that love can stay alive even after a lifetime of waiting? Encourage viewers to comment, share, and subscribe for more emotional English listening stories.